Hey Biosphere, it's Brayden and Shane here. Today we're going to talk to you about insects. Insects fall in the phylum of Arthropoda. They're a very diverse and interesting group. Today there's close to 1 million known species and there's more to be discovered. So let us take you through and show you a little bit about the insect.
Yeah, hopefully today we'll be able to help you understand the differences between these organisms and others that live on the earth today. One of the main things that you can spot out for an insect is their body structure. So they have 3 separate body segments, and those are brought out with their head, the thorax, and the abdomen. So just keep those different. You might think that the abdomen is in the middle, but it's not. Remember that it's at the end.
Yeah, and something important to know about insects is they are very small. Obviously on the board they look big, but they are some of the smallest animals out there. And this comes down to a surface area to volume ratio. As you may remember in class, we discussed the cube model. So if you have a small cube that's, let's say, 1 inch on each side, the surface area of that cube is going to be 6, and the volume of that cube is going to be 1. But let's say you take another cube that is 2 units on each side. That surface area is going to be 24, while the volume is at 8. The ratios of this is 6 to 3. So what happens is, the bigger it gets, it has a better potential to crush itself because the surface area, which is the exoskeleton, cannot support itself.
Kind of going back to the example that he used in class talking about the whale. When they come on land, they start to crush their own body weight. Another thing that you can use to distinguish an insect is they have antennae that come off of their head. Now, according to different types of insects, they're used for various reasons. They can be used for touching, smelling. They can even detect which way the wind is coming, and they can even taste. So just depending on what insects you're dealing with, their antennae are used for different purposes.
And then coming off of the thorax of the insect, the center part, you have 6 legs, something unique to insects. They all have 6 legs. So we'll draw those bad boys on there. Alright, 6 legs. And something important to note about these 6 legs is they walk with what's called a tripod gait. This tripod gait, you take 2 legs on one side and the center leg, and that's how they walk. They move those ones at the same time, simultaneously. And this really helps with balance, but it also requires minimal coordination. And along with the legs, there are lots and lots of nerves on the legs, so it doesn't require much brain power necessarily to get them to move. A lot of the feeling and walking is actually done within the legs itself.
The last thing we wanted to talk about with structure of an insect is that insects have 2 pair of wings. That was a horribly grown for wings, but they have 2 sets of wings. So depending, we can talk about 2 different examples. Like a dragonfly, you can easily see there are 2 pair of wings. But if you look at a ladybug, you might think it only has 1 set of wings. That's because the first set is kind of a shell on top of the second pair, which leads to the last point we want to talk about, that all insects have an exoskeleton, simply meaning that they have their skeletal system on the outside of their bodies to protect their inside organs. So that's our first segment. Okay, welcome to segment 2. And in this segment, we're going to be talking about the life history of insects. And the life history can be broken up into a few categories. The first one is that insects actually have 2 different types of metamorphosis. There's incomplete metamorphosis and complete metamorphosis. So I'm going to be talking about incomplete metamorphosis. And simply what incomplete metamorphosis entails is when an insect is growing and getting larger and it starts to shed off its outer layer, basically, and so that the inside organs can continue to grow and fit within inside of its shell. So first you have an egg, and then it turns into a nymph as it continues to grow and as it sheds layers, and then it continues to shed and molt, and it finally reaches full adulthood.
And then talking about complete metamorphosis, so we start with an egg, and then it goes to a larva. This larva, in many cases, could be a caterpillar. That's what most people think of. And then, at a certain point in its life, it enters its cocoon, or its pupa, And in there, it undergoes a lot of changes and it develops into its adult form. And then it'll eventually bust out of there and become the beautiful butterfly that we all love so much.
So we also wanted to talk about the second part of life history. And if you've ever been camping, I'm sure that you've heard a cricket out in the distance making some kind of sound. And you may have wondered what that sound is, but that's actually a mating call that the males do when they are striving to find a female. And so the next time that you're camping, just recognize that fact that you actually have male crickets who are calling to females out there. So that's one type of mating, but there's also other types that Brayden's going to talk about.
Yeah, so in moths, for example, the female can release this pheromone that males they sense and they're attracted to from very long distances away, and that's how they come into contact so that they can begin their mating process. And then you also see other processes like in beetles. You have glowing beetles, like the little light bugs, that fly around, and those attract so that they can find mates. And then you also have beetles that will kind of wobble around and like dance and stuff so that they can look cute for their potential partner.
Now, this does attract some problems though. So for instance, if you have a cricket who's out there proclaiming his territory and calling for a female, and then all of a sudden you have a female hear that sound, but you may also have birds or bats that also hear that sound. So yes, mating is also a gamble in the sense, but the bigger you are, the more successful you're going to be. So that concludes section 2. Thank you. All right, welcome to our final and third section of our lecture today. So we wanted to talk about some really fun and important points to kind of remember with insects.
So where are insects found?
Everywhere.
Literally. And what do they eat?
Everything.
So about half the insects, they feed on plant forms. So leaves, roots, seeds, nectars, wood. Yeah.
Basically about everything. Also, there's some who are like, they feed on prey. So you have like your praying mantis that go and eat other insects. So I guess we just wanted to help you out, and we hope that with what we've talked about today, we'll help you prepare for the upcoming exam. Good luck.
Study hard. All right.